Okay, so this is the second half of the comparison essay. It'll be shorter than the last one, but I felt like, 20-minute, 25-minute lecture is a little bit much to have to take in at one time. Plus, uploading it gets to be a problem. So, this is more just rules to think about when you're actually writing the essay or when you're deciding on your topics. So with your subjects, they have to have significant similarities or differences sorry. Make sure there's a number of things you can write about, not just one or two. All right, and make sure it makes sense. Uh, dog leashes and cat leashes don't really make sense. There's not a lot of cat leashes. Uh, and while there may be similarities, the two topics don't actually work together. Uh, what you also have to do is make sure they're from the same category. So cars should be compared to cars, apps with apps, clothing lines to clothing lines. Now, however, be aware of this, and this is why I put this here, is even if they come from the same category, they should be similar enough that you can show how they are similar and or how they are different. You can't really compare a Cadillac Escalade and a Morris Mini. The Cadillac Escalade is basically a tank on wheels, and the Morris Mini is basically a beer can on wheels. Yeah, they're both cars, but that's about all they have in common. They have four wheels and an engine. That's about all they have in common. So you can compare like the Cadillac Escalade with a Lincoln Navigator, let's say, right? Two giant SUVs, and you compare the Morris Mini, I don't know, with the Miata, the Mazda Miata, kind of. I mean, because the Miata is more of a sports car. I can't think of a Mini. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying. Apps. You can't compare an app with like a piece of software that you would buy, like a Windows. Uh, but you should also not compare like Spotify with Instagram. What do the two have? Yeah, they're both apps, but what do they have in common? But Spotify and Pandora you could compare, or whatever iTunes music app is that they're trying to push now. Clothing lines as well. You can't compare Men's Warehouse suit with a Giorgio Armani suit. The Men's Warehouse sells for 250, 300 bucks, maybe a little more nowadays. The Giorgio Armani goes for $7,000 to $8,000. I mean, I can wear a Men's Warehouse suit and I look okay. I put on an Armani suit, I look really good, really good. Uh, and so there's really not a comparison there. So be aware of that. All right, now you can compare from two separate categories. However, this is an analogy, and you can do it. So I'll give you some examples in a second. But you've also got to make sure there's significant points of similarity. So people compare the computer and a brain. You would not think, initially when looking at that you could do that. Uh, because one is mechanical and it's metal and wires, and the other is flesh. It's a human organ. However, how they operate, the decision making process are similar, and that's why they can be compared. The networks that are used are similar to some extent to where they can be compared. You can compare religion and sports. For an awful lot of people, sports is their religion, especially when you're talking about like British soccer fans or what they call football. Uh, or even some NFL or NBA fans in this country. It is their religion. It's where they go every Sunday to worship. Their gods are a little different than people who go to regular churches, but still, there's enough similarities to how each member acts within each of those groups that you could show and do a comparison with it. All right. All right. So now we're getting down to the end here. The guidelines, make sure that you've got items that are related, right? And that they've got these similarities. Have a single organizing idea. It doesn't have to be stated directly, but it can be. So you could say something like twins are more different than alike. So this lets me know that you may be doing a comparison contrast, but you're going to work more on the comparison. And what your point is, your purpose is to show why twins are different, and not as alike. Even identical twins are not as identical as people think they are. All right, have one of the three methods of development. This is absolutely important. Pick one and stick to it. Either the block by block, where you do all of one, then all of the other. Do both in the same order of what items you're looking at. If you do a line point by point, so 1 point from one item and then 1 point from the other, one second point, third point, or a combination where you figure out categories, deal with the one category for the one, deal with the same category for the second, deal with the second category for the one, deal with the second category for the second, etc. All right. But again, you'll lose the most points on this essay if you start mixing those strategies. If you're not sure, go back and look at the other half of this lecture, look in your book. Have specific relevant examples. Oh, and this is huge. Give equal treatment to both subjects. If you write a page and a half on one, you need to write a page and a half on the other. You can't do something like I had a student when I first started teaching, because I didn't realize this would be a problem. It was the first time I taught the essay. He compared Mustangs with Camaros. He wrote 2.5 pages on the Mustang or on the Camaro. I think 2.5 pages on the Camaro and a half page on the Mustang. Yeah, which one do you think he preferred? That's not a comparison. You have to be unbiased. You can definitely prefer one over the other, but you have to be objective and unbiased in laying out the information. You can't bias your reader by giving everything about one and very little about the second. Whatever you say about the first, you have to say the same, give the same information about the second. All right. So give equal treatment to both subjects. You can definitely, and the way the information you give, you can definitely show a favoritism to one or the other, but you have to allow the reader to come to his or her own conclusion. You can't force that. That's known as propaganda, and you need to stay away from. All right, now use transitions to help the reader understand similarities. There's things like as, like, likewise, resemble, similar to, although, but, even though, however. On the other hand, otherwise. All of those words work really well in a comparison essay. So you're not always saying, the same over and over. And then conclude, probably just restating your thesis and summarizing your main points. There are other ways to conclude. That one's probably the safest and the most efficient and the most effective. You could do other things if you want. I mean, you could say why one would be better than the other, why somebody should choose an electric car over a gas-powered car or, an internal combustion engine, whatever. But it's up to you to determine that. All right. All right. That concludes that. Uh, the assignment sheets in this week's module. Have a look over it. If you have any questions, again, shoot me an email.